Okay, Gav, so what have we got in here?
So old Semillon vines, what we call a trois hectares.
Okay.
One French sommelier said, why is it called the trois hectares?
Is it not
3 hectares. And
Old Semillon.
These ones here were planted in 1947.
Wow.
So over 60 years old.
Yeah, lovely thick rootstock.
Retirement age, depending on which country you come from.
Yeah.
You can just see the growth here. The roots go down pretty deep.
And you're obviously cutting right back to the old vine every season.
Oh yeah.
So this is
So you
entirely
can see
Semillon?
This is all. There's a few old Sauvignon Blanc, because in the old days when they planted, they weren't quite so fussy about whether it was Sauvignon Blanc or Semillon.
Okay.
Or, in fact, there's the odd Merlot Blanc and things like that in there, which not many people know.
Merlot Blanc?
Yeah. Not particularly good. Don't worry about
Okay.
But pretty healthy. This is in May 2009, so about this time of year, a little bit later, in May 2009, this was hailed on here and we lost everything. All these young shoots, very tender, were all ripped off, and you see all the little bunches were just knocked off.
I was reading.
Here we are, the baby bunches, which will flower and turn into grapes, all being well.
I was reading one of your gazettes from 2004. You had hail then, you had hail again in 2009. Is this a regular threat?
No, we had hail in June 2003 during Vinexpo. That was bad news, but we didn't lose quite so much then, although Decanter reported that every vine in Crayon had been destroyed. So all our friends were sort of phoning us up saying is everything all right. It wasn't quite so bad, but we lost quite a lot in 2003 and then in 2009. But even Margaux, parts of Margaux were hailed on in 2008, 2009, and again last year in 2011. So
it's a real threat then?
Yeah, hail is a real risk. The trois hectares, the Semillon there. The Semillon also lasts. It can grow older really, but it's less vulnerable to, especially a disease called Esca, which is a sort of wood disease, which Sauvignon Blanc is very susceptible to. But no, of course, old vines are prized, but that's if they're planted well in the first place. I was talking with Jean-Philippe Delmas of Briand, because they've just bought Château Bauduc in Saint-Emilion, and they've renamed it Quintus, so Château Quintus. And that one of his issues is the rootstock that the vines are planted on, which he's not particularly happy with. Because depending on when your vines are planted, so post the frost in '56, when a lot of vines in say Saint-Emilion around here were lost, very harsh frost. There was a lot of replanting, and in the sort of 60s and 70s, there was a tendency to use sort of vigorous rootstocks, and so they may be old vines now, but are they on the right foundation? Yeah. So what we found with these, when you crap Bordeaux, i.e. that rather sort of thin, meagre, not very generous Bordeaux, and I'm talking
supermarket Bordeaux.
No, I won't say supermarket Bordeaux, because of course I'm sure they're buyers, and I know their buyers are working very hard to get the best value for money, of course. But thin Bordeaux generally comes from wide-spaced vineyards like this, where you're allowed to produce the same amount of wine per hectare as more densely planted vineyards like that.
Yeah, you're about half the width over here.
So in other words, it just stands to reason how many bunches per vine do you need to make a certain quantity here compared to there? Well, you need double the number of bunches. If you have double the number of bunches, then you're going to generally have less concentration, less flavour, less character.
Okay.
So we could have planted down the middle, that's one way of doing it, but then you find that the young vines in the middle really struggle against the established vines
because of the root systems?
Yeah, so it takes them longer to grow. So, here we've decided we'll rip this up and replant. And it's a shame to lose some of the older vines, but you could just say, okay, what's the future of this vineyard looking at this in terms of quality versus what's the future of that
Yeah.
in terms of quality. You can see even with a completely layman's eye, you think, well, that looks like it's going to produce something good. Maybe not right now, but give it time. It's a long-term investment thing.
Yeah.
And this has been in the departure lounge for a couple of years. We should probably rip it up. And what you can see with these old vineyards when they die, because this is another real issue, is you have to replace vines. So at some point you say, okay, we're not going to replace vines anymore. We're going to rip up and start again.
How long would it take these guys to come up now and start being productive?
Well, these are the little ones.
The little ones, yeah.
Well, you're allowed to use the
5
fruit
years.
after 3 years, but really when they struggle, you see there's less fruit on them, and then when they do, and sometimes in top vineyards, even when so if you were in Bordeaux at harvest time, say at the end of September, when Château Lafite would be harvesting their Cabernet Sauvignon, you would notice that they actually mark their young vines and go through and pick those, and then vinify those, make wine out of the young vines in the same parcel as the old vines, because they pick them at different times.
Okay.
So because it ripens at different times. The young, and also the fruit isn't as good.
Right. Yeah.
So,
On the trellising here, Gavin, just a little bit on the trellising, because obviously you're even on these newer vines, you're cutting right down to about 2 feet off the ground, but your trellising runs to about 5 feet.
yeah. So yeah. I mean, this is Bordeaux is probably. Let's take a look. Bordeaux's the system of trellising in Bordeaux is called guillot double or guillot simple, and what that means is that what they look like is either a T-shape for guillot double, where you've got 2 branches, if you like, coming out here. Guillot simple, which is where you have just one. You see that more in, say, Pomerol, guillot simple. But in sort of English, it would be called vertical shoot positioning.
Okay.
So it's a pretty straightforward pruning system and trellising system, whereby you leave enough buds, maybe 8 or 10 buds, and then the fruit-bearing branches then pop off the branch there, and then these will grow at quite a rate now. We're in early May. They will grow at quite a rate, and then you see the training wires down on the ground here.
Yeah.
We'll lift these as they become heavier, if you like. They'll try and grow upwards, and then when they become heavier, they'll flop down. And so we'll push we'll bring the fruit-bearing branches up between the training wires, and so you have all the foliage, all the
So
canopies.
you actually raise these up each side then?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Okay.
And hook them onto the post there.
Okay.
So, and then the fruit is all stays all in this area here. So it's relatively easy to look after in terms of if you need to spray, or if you have some say green harvesting, or a little bit of work around the fruit zone to do. And then you've got the engine room of the canopy, obviously with the leaves, through photosynthesis,
Yeah.
creating the sugars for the grapes.
Yeah.
And you can then treat the leaves as appropriate. So it's a fairly simple way to do it, but in different regions around the world you'll see lots of different trellising systems. So whether you go to New Zealand and you see Scott Henry, a totally different type of trellising system, or just bush vine, without training wires, different types of trellising systems and pruning systems around the world.
So is this just best practice in Bordeaux, or is this actual?
No, this is
it's law, is
laid
it?
down in.
Okay,
in,
you have to do it this way.
You have to do it. You can do other types, and they are always experimenting with other types. Funny thing in Bordeaux, they always seem to be experimenting, but never allowing you actually to do very much as a result of their experiments. So a bit resistance to change. You do see sometimes lyre type trellising systems in tests and stuff, but no, this is generally the way it's done here.
Yeah.